Let us be honest for a moment. Let us strip away the polite fictions we recite at dinner parties and the comforting lies we tell ourselves in the mirror. Let us be painfully, vividly honest. By all outward appearances, by every metric of observation available to us, this thing we call life is merely a flicker. It is a brief, terrified spark of consciousness sandwiched between two endless, impenetrable nights. There is the darkness before you were born, billions of years of silence, and the darkness after you die, billions more of the same. And in between, there is this flash, this gasp. And if we look closely, we see that there is not even a truly peaceful day between those two nights. For the nature of this flicker is duality. The more we allow ourselves to feel pleasure, the more we open our nervous systems to pain. The capacity for joy is the exact same capacity for sorrow. They are the same door, swinging in two directions. The more light we draw into our lives, the sharper and deeper the shadow that trails behind it. You cannot numb the grief without numbing the joy, and you cannot invite the love without signing a contract for the eventual loss. It is always there, lurking just behind the laughter, haunting the triumph, shadowing the so-called joy. It is the subtle ache in the chest when the sunset is too beautiful, for you know it is already fading. We have tried, through centuries of desperate effort and brilliant imagination, to make sense of this. We have built civilizations to explain away the absurdity of a flickering existence that ends in silence. We cannot bear the thought that we are merely biological accidents, fleeting interruptions in the quiet of the cosmos. And the only way we seem able to cope is by insisting, with violent certainty, that there must be something more. There must be a deeper layer, a grander plan, a hidden architect behind the outward spectacle. We invent heaven, salvation, rebirth, karma, destiny, call it what you will. These are our security blankets. We crave security not merely in this life, in our bank accounts and our homes, but beyond it. We demand a warranty on our souls. Why? Because to accept the rawness of what is, to look the universe in the eye and acknowledge that life comes and goes without fixed reason, without a guarantee, without a manager, is a terrifying prospect, is the ultimate vertigo. Now, I may not be forgiven for introducing such grave, heavy matters with a childish image, but the whole affair reminds me of something I tried to do when I was a very young boy. I remember standing by a stream, possessed by a strange, impossible desire. I wanted to send someone a parcel of water. Not a bottle of water, not a cup. I wished to wrap the water itself. I wanted to take a sheet of brown paper and a length of twine and tie up a flowing chunk of the stream. And of course, every time I tried, the result was a soggy, tearing mess. The paper dissolved, the string went limp, and the water escaped. It slipped through my fingers just as life slips through our fingers when we try to contain it, to own it, to freeze it. You see, human beings are rather brilliant at tying packages. It is our specialty. We have spent 10,000 years building systems of belief, structures of politics, codes of morality, and towers of metaphysics. These are our parcels. They are carefully wrapped bundles of meaning, each one attempting to hold the unholdable, to name the unnameable, to freeze the living moment into a static truth. We wrap life in words, in definitions, in dogmas. But no matter how clever the method, no matter how strong the string, or how thick the paper, the package eventually falls apart. The water bursts free. Reality is fluid, our ideas about it are rigid, and the rigid always shatters against the fluid. And here we find ourselves in the modern dilemma. The more our knowledge has grown, the more history we accumulate, the more facts we collect in our great digital libraries, the more fragile these packages appear. They cannot contain the complexity of the world we have discovered. They cannot hold the flow. The ancient myths that once held civilizations together, the stories of gods on mountaintops and spirits in the trees, have dissolved under the harsh light of inquiry. So, the modern mind finds itself in a peculiar, neurotic state. We are flooded with information, drowning in data, yet we are starving for meaning. We know how everything works, but we have forgotten why it matters. We live in an age of extraordinary insecurity. This is not because the world is physically more dangerous than before. In many ways, it is safer, but because the psychological anchors we use to cling to have unraveled. Traditions, religions, social roles, eternal truths, all are questioned, all are cast into doubt. The floorboards have been pulled up. Some celebrate this as a liberation, a breaking of chains. Others, understandably, find it disorienting, even terrifying. But most people live somewhere between the two, briefly exhilarated by the freedom of modern life, then quietly overtaken by a creeping dread. For if nothing is fixed, if there is no script, if life is truly just change, just flow, just this chaotic present, then what becomes a hope? Hope, you see, is the drug of the anxious. Hope is always aimed at the future. It is a projection. We hope for a better job, a longer life, a reunion in heaven after death. Hope relies on the idea that then will be better than now. But if the future is as fluid as water, if there is no promised land awaiting us, what then? It seems, quite frankly, hopeless. And yet, we still chase. We run on the treadmill. We chase happiness not in the present moment, which is the only place it can exist, but in the promise of what is to come. We deceive ourselves constantly. We say, just around the corner, then I'll be fulfilled. After this crisis passes, then I can relax. Once I find my purpose, once I get the promotion, when I get married, when I retire, when I die. We live entirely in the when. But the future, like the water in my childhood parcel, never quite arrives. Have you noticed? Tomorrow is a concept. It is never an experience. When you reach tomorrow, it is today. And even when the long-awaited day finally comes, the graduation, the wedding, the victory, we find it cannot be fully enjoyed unless it, too, carries a promise of another future beyond it. We are addicted to the horizon. It is a cruel trick of mind. To seek happiness in the future is to forever chase a mirage, a will-o'-the-wisp that disappears the moment you reach for it. You spend your whole life preparing to live, getting ready to be happy, and then, in the end, you vanish, having never truly arrived. But understand this insecurity, this gnawing uncertainty is not new. It is the human condition. There has never been a time in human history where security was more than temporary, more than a painted backdrop. Even in what we nostalgically call the good old days, life was fragile. Death, disease, and disaster did not wait politely at the margins. They sat at the dinner table. What made life bearable then, however, was not certainty of safety, but belief. Belief in God, in the soul, in eternal justice, in things untouched by the calamities of the world. And while these beliefs may not have made life less precarious physically, they gave it shape. They gave it a narrative arc. They provided a container for the water. But now, today, such convictions are harder to sustain. Even in churches and temples, even among the devout, there lingers the shadow of doubt. We have eaten the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and the garden is closed. Science has not only replaced religion in authority, it has stripped from us the comfort of myth. The scientist does not pretend to know what cannot be known. The scientist looks at the stars and sees nuclear fusion and vacuum, not the eyes of angels. And in doing so, science reveals the vast, indifferent mystery of the cosmos. This honesty is admirable, is brave, but it leaves the human heart famished. Because while the mind is satisfied with logic and equations, the soul, that poetic, feeling part of us, yearns for more. It wants purpose. It wants direction. It wants assurance that all of this struggle, all this love, all this pain matters. And when those assurances collapse, when the sky is empty, we look elsewhere. We become desperate for a container. Political movements become our myths. Social crusades become our meaning. We join collective efforts not always because they are just, but because they give us a sense of being part of something larger, a sense that we are not alone in the dark. We scream our opinions on the internet to prove we exist. But you can feel it, can't you? The trembling underneath the outrage. The fragility beneath the dogma. For these are not certainties, they are shouts in the night to keep the silence at bay. And the louder we shout, the more fragile we reveal ourselves to be. So what happens to a mind, to a being that can no longer believe, not in fairy tales, but any foundation at all? What becomes of the heart when all the old myths crumble, and the new ones ring hollow? It begins to grasp. It panics. We turn inward, hoping to find permanence in ourselves, in our identities, our careers, our accumulation of knowledge. We say, at least I am this. At least I am a doctor, or a mother, or a success. At least I know that. We try to turn the ego into a fortress. But the truth, if you look just a little too long in the mirror, is that you are changing constantly, quietly, without your permission. The face in the glass is not the face of 10 years ago. The thoughts you hold today would startle your younger self. The tastes, the hopes, the cells in your blood, none of them stay. You are a river, not a statue. And so you clutch. You plan. You try to prepare, to fortify against the flow. You attempt, as all modern people do, to organize your life into a blueprint of safety. You build routines. You set goals. You make lists. You meditate to optimize your focus. You track your calories, forecast your income, buy insurance, visualize success. You try in every imaginable way to manage the future. You try to be the CEO of your own existence. But no matter how precise the effort, the outcome never feels secure. Does it? Something always slips out of view. Some variable, some person, some stray emotion, some global event ruins the equation, and you are back where you started, uncertain, exposed. And then, here lies the rub. The tragic twist, you blame yourself. You say, if only I had tried harder. If only I had planned better. If only I had been more focused, more disciplined, more positive. You internalize the chaos as a personal failure. But the real problem is not your failure. The problem is the game itself. The problem is the premise. You are chasing control in a world that is fundamentally uncontrollable. You are searching for security in a realm that is defined from the subatomic level to the galactic by change. It is, as we said before, like trying to tie up water in a paper parcel. You get wet, you fail, you try again, and you weep. And in that trying, in that straining, in that reaching for a future that never arrives, you create your own suffering. Here is the paradox, the great irony of our psychological lives. The desire for security is the very thing that makes you feel insecure. Think about it. The more you need to be safe, the more you notice every potential threat. The more you demand certainty, the more terrifying the unknown becomes. If you build a fortress, you must spend your life guarding the walls. The more tightly you grip the rope, the more your hands burn. In the act of resisting uncertainty, you become obsessed with it. And what you resist, you magnify. Fear breeds fear. Worry breeds more worry. Is a feedback loop. To want safety, absolute, permanent, unshakable safety, is to fight against the very nature of existence. Is to demand that the ocean freeze so you can walk across it. Because the universe you see is not fixed, is not a machine. It dances. It flows. It erupts and collapses, sings and silences, all in rhythm, without asking your permission. Is a process, not a thing. And so, when you demand that it pause for your comfort, when you demand that it fits into your box, you suffer. You suffer because life will not hold still. It will not meet you in the future. It is already here. The mistake is in thinking you can stand apart from it. We have this sensation that we are the subject and the world is the object. We think we are the observer looking in, the manager directing the show from some imagined place of separateness. We feel like we are behind our eyes, looking out. But you are not outside of life. You are not a stranger here. You are not a visitor. You are in it. You are it. Just as a wave is not something separate from the ocean, it is the ocean momentarily expressing itself as a wave, so you are not separate from a universe. You are the universe momentarily expressing itself as you. The moment you see this, really see it, the need for security begins to dissolve. Why? Because what could be more secure than this very moment? The only one that ever truly exists. If you are the ocean, why are you afraid of the wave crashing? You are the water, not the form. So then what is one to do if life offers no final foothold? If beliefs fade, if plans crumble, if even the self turns to smoke under scrutiny, where does one stand? And the answer, though simple, is not easy to accept. The answer is, you stop standing. You stop seeking a ground. You let go of the ledge. You fall. You fall freely, openly into the present. Not because the present moment is safe, it isn't, but because it is the only thing that is real. You see, we have confused the idea of freedom with the power to control. We think we are free when we have mastery over the future, when we've eliminated risk, when the path is clear and marked with signs. But that isn't freedom at all. That is fear wearing the mask of progress. That is a cage made of gold. Real freedom is far more wild. It is the surrender to the rhythm of life, to change, to death, to rebirth. It is accepting these things not as enemies to be defeated, but as the very texture of existence. Because in truth, you were never in control. That was the illusion. There was never a separate you behind the eyes, pulling the levers, managing the world like a ship from its helm. There is only awareness. There is only witnessing. There is only the dancing. But as long as you try to cling to certainty, to permanence, to mine, you will suffer. You suffer not because life is cruel, but because you want it to be something it is not. You want it to be solid, predictable, safe. And life, thank God, is none of those things. If it were, it would be dead. A stone is secure, a flower is not. The very beauty of it all is in its impermanence. A cherry blossom is not less beautiful because it falls, it is beautiful because it falls. If it were made of plastic and lasted forever, it would be cheap. The sun is no less radiant because it sets. The melody is only music because the notes vanish. If you held one note forever, it would be a scream, not a song. So, why do you imagine you must remain? Why you fight to freeze the flowing water of your own life? The wisdom of insecurity is not some clever philosophy to be memorized. It is a way of seeing. It is a return to sanity. It is the recognition that the moment you stop trying to secure your life is the moment it becomes alive. That in letting go of your need for answers, you begin to feel the mystery again. You were never meant to have it all figured out. The point was never to capture life, but to feel it. To live it as music, not as math. As dance, not as a march. So when you stop resisting change, when you no longer brace against the current, you find a startling truth. The river was carrying you all along. You do not need to swim so hard. You are not lost. You are not late. You are simply here. And here is enough. Now perhaps the greatest illusion of all, the root from which all this anxiety springs, is the idea that you are separate from life. That you are a skin-encapsulated ego, a little soul tossed into a hostile world not of your choosing, doing your best to survive and hopefully to succeed before the lights go out. But who told you that? Where did you get this idea that there's a little you inside your head, sitting in a pilot's chair, thinking the thoughts and directing the action like some spiritual CEO? You were taught it. You were told from the very beginning, you are you, and everything else is other. And so you've spent your life defending that boundary, building walls between the inside and the outside. But consider this. Can there be a front without a back? Can you have a coin with only one side? Can you have a buyer without a seller? No, they arise together. In the same way, you cannot have an organism without an environment. They are one process. You are not a stranger here. You are the universe expressing itself briefly as a person. The air you breathe, the thoughts you think, the heartbeat in your chest, these are not your possessions. They are processes. They are movements. They are the world happening through you. You don't beat your heart. You don't know how to do it. It happens. You don't grow your hair. You don't digest your food. It's all happening of itself. And even your thoughts, look closely. You don't choose them before you think them. They arise like clouds forming in the sky, drifting and dissolving. You are the sky, not the clouds. So when you let go of the idea of being someone in charge, what's left is not chaos. What's left is peace. The fear of death begins to dissolve because you see there was never a fixed separate you to lose in the first place. The wave crashes, but the water remains. So then how does one live, practically, knowing that all things pass? How do we exist in this flux? You live as the tree lives. The tree bends in the wind. It is rooted not in certainty, but in presence. It does not cling to its leaves when autumn comes, for it knows they must fall to make way for the spring. It does not beg the river to stop flowing, for its movement is its lifeblood. To love life truly is to love its change, to love without owning, to act without anxiety, to hold without grasping. You eat the fruit of the moment. You taste it fully, the sweetness and the tartness. But you do not try to preserve the peel. You do not try to frame the seed. You let it go. This is not a call to apathy. It is not a call to sit on the couch and do nothing. No, quite the opposite. When you are no longer driven by the frantic fear of the future, you begin to live with a tremendous, quiet energy. You live with gentleness. You act with great power because you are not worried about the result. You play the game for the joy of playing, not just to win. You laugh more because you see the cosmic joke that you were trying to pack the ocean into a box. You cry more easily because your heart is no longer armored against the pain of the world. You touch the world more softly because you are no longer trying to conquer it. You realize that you are it. And so, to live wisely is to live freely. To live freely is to live without clinging to the rocks. And to live without clinging is to be, at last, at peace with the water. You float. You breathe. You are carried. And in that surrender, you find the only security that has ever existed, the security of having nothing left to lose.